Samuel Little, a name that sends chills down your spine, a man who claimed the lives of dozens, hiding in plain sight. What drove him to commit such horrific crimes? Let's dive deep into his chilling confessions. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support our channel. Stay tuned as we uncover the chilling truth. A quiet beginning. Samuel Little was born in 1940 in Reynolds, Georgia. Raised in a troubled home, his early life set the stage for the horrors to come. Abandoned by his mother, he was thrust into a world of instability. A violent youth, Little's criminal career started early. As a teenager, he was arrested for various offenses, including theft and assault. His violent tendencies emerged at a young age, laying the foundation for his future as a killer. The first murder. In 1970, Little claimed his first victim, Mary Broley, a woman he strangled in Miami. This was just the beginning of a 35-year killing spree that would leave a trail of bodies across the country. The pattern emerges. Little was meticulous. He chose vulnerable women, often prostitutes or drug addicts. His method of killing was the same each time: manual strangulation, a brutal act that brought him twisted satisfaction, evading arrest. Despite multiple arrests for assault, Little managed to evade capture. His victims, often forgotten by society, were easy targets. He knew which women would not be missed. The M.O. Little's modus operandi was simple. He would pick up women, often offering them drugs or money, then take them to secluded areas to kill them. He strangled them, sometimes allowing them to revive before finishing the job. The red flags. In the early 1980s, Little was a prime suspect in multiple murders. However, investigators lacked the evidence to tie him to the crimes. He slipped through their fingers again and again. A close call. In 1982, Little was caught with the body of Patricia Mount in his car. Despite the damning evidence, he was acquitted. It was a shocking failure in the justice system that would haunt his victims. Living in the shadows. For years, Little continued his killing spree, moving from city to city. His victims' bodies were often discarded in remote areas, and many were misclassified as overdose deaths or suicides. The confession begins. In 2018, after years of denial, Samuel Little finally began to confess to his crimes. At the age of 71, with failing health, he revealed the horrifying truth of his actions to investigators. The drawing of victims. What set Little apart from other killers was his ability to recall every detail of his crimes. He drew pictures of his victims, their clothing, and the locations where he disposed of their bodies. A shocking memory. Little's memory was almost photographic. He could recall the last meal his victims had eaten or the exact spot where he left their bodies. This level of detail helped investigators link him to many cold cases. A life in and out of prison. Little's life was a series of arrests and short prison sentences. Despite his violent tendencies, the justice system failed to keep him behind bars for long, allowing him to continue his killing spree. The search for closure. As Little confessed to more murders, investigators began to connect the dots. They discovered that he had been responsible for at least 93 murders over a span of 35 years. The victims. Most of Little's victims were marginalized women, prostitutes, drug addicts, and those who lived on society's fringes. He preyed on those no one would miss, making it easier for him to evade capture. No remorse. During his confessions, Little showed no remorse for his actions. He spoke of his murders matter-of-factly, as if they were mere tasks to be completed. His cold indifference was chilling. The role of his mother. Little's mother was a key figure in his life, and not in a good way. He was abandoned as a child, which led to deep psychological scars. His hatred towards women may have stemmed from the neglect he suffered. A twisted relationship. Little's long-term partner, Alia Jean Dorsey, was unaware of his killings. She assisted him in his travels, but never knew the true extent of his violent tendencies. The method Little's method was simple. Find a woman, take her to a secluded spot, and strangle her. His hands were his weapon of choice, leaving behind no evidence, making it nearly impossible to trace his crimes. The victim's struggle. Little enjoyed the fear in his victims' eyes. He would sometimes allow them to gasp for air before finishing the job, deriving twisted pleasure from the struggle. The Reign of Terror. For over 3 decades, Little's killings went unnoticed. The justice system failed to connect the dots, and his victims were forgotten. He continued his reign of terror across the United States. The breakthrough. In 2012, after being arrested for a drug charge, Little's DNA was finally tested. It was a breakthrough that would tie him to several cold case murders. He was finally connected to the crimes he had committed for years. The arrest. After years of being in and out of prison, Little was arrested in 2012. It was a moment of justice, but for many families, it came far too late. Their loved ones had been taken long ago. The conviction. In 2014, Little was convicted of the murders of 3 women. It was a small victory for justice, but there were still many unanswered questions. How many more women had he killed? A twisted confession. Little's confessions were disturbing. He described in great detail how he killed his victims, relishing the memory of their deaths. He was a man who found satisfaction in his crimes, and his lack of remorse was terrifying. The victims' names. Little didn't just remember his victims' faces, he remembered their names. He spoke about them as if they were people he had known, yet to him they were nothing more than prey. The faces of his victims. Throughout his interviews, Little would describe his victims in vivid detail. He remembered their clothes, their hair, even their demeanor. These memories were his trophies. The chilling drawings. One of the most unsettling parts of Little's confession was his ability to draw pictures of his victims. These sketches were used by investigators to identify some of his victims, offering closure to their families. The lack of evidence. One of the reasons Little had been able to evade capture for so long was the lack of forensic evidence. His method of strangulation left no physical marks, and his victims' bodies were often too decomposed to provide clues. The close calls. Little had several close calls with law enforcement. At times he was almost caught, but his ability to cover his tracks allowed him to continue his killing spree undetected. The pattern of evasion. Little was a master at evading detection. He moved from city to city, always looking for new victims. His ability to stay under the radar for so long was a testament to his skill in avoiding capture. The end of the road. In 2018, at the age of 78, Little's confessions came to an end. He had revealed the truth about his crimes, but many questions remained unanswered. How many victims had he truly claimed? The final arrest. Little's final arrest came after years of being a fugitive. It was a long overdue moment of justice, but it wasn't enough to bring back the lives he had taken. A legacy of horror. Little's legacy is one of horror and terror. His ability to evade capture for so long makes him one of the most chilling figures in the history of American crime. The confessions continue. Despite being behind bars, Little continued to confess to more murders. His confessions were disturbing, but they also provided closure for the families of his victims. The impact on investigators. For the investigators who worked on Little's case, his confessions were both a relief and a curse. They had spent years trying to connect the dots, and now they had to face the reality of the horror he had caused. The truth comes out. As Little's confessions unfolded, the full extent of his crimes became clear. What had once seemed like isolated incidents now appeared to be part of a larger pattern, a pattern that had gone unnoticed for decades. The justice system's failure. One of the most disturbing aspects of Little's case was the failure of the justice system to catch him earlier. His numerous arrests and close calls were never enough to bring him to justice until it was too late. The families left behind. For the families of Little's victims, the truth was a double-edged sword. While they finally received answers, the pain of their loss was no lessened by the knowledge of how their loved ones had been taken. The final days. Little's final days were spent in prison, but he showed no remorse for his actions. His lack of regret was a stark reminder of the darkness within him, the unsolved cases. Even after Little's confessions, there are still many unsolved cases. Some of his victims may never be identified, and some of his murders may never be linked to him. A lifetime of crime. Samuel Little's life was marked by crime. From petty thefts to brutal murders, his story is one of violence, manipulation, and evasion. The psychology of a killer. What made Samuel Little tick? His psychological profile reveals a man driven by a deep need for control and a twisted sense of satisfaction in his ability to take life. The danger of charm. Little was charming when he needed to be. He used his charm to lure women into his trap, gaining their trust before taking their lives. The thrill of the kill. For Little, the act of killing was not just a means to an end. It was an experience in itself. He found excitement and pleasure in the control he had over his victims' lives. The early warning signs. There were warning signs in Little's early life that went unnoticed. His history of abuse and violence should have been a red flag, but the system failed to address them in time. A master of manipulation. Little was a master manipulator. He was able to deceive those around him, including law enforcement and his victims, for decades without ever being caught. The final interview. In his final interview, Little showed no remorse. He spoke of his crimes with chilling indifference, offering little more than a matter-of-fact account of the lives he had taken. The long wait. The families of Little's victims had to wait years for justice. Their loved ones were taken, and the answers were slow to come. But at least they had the truth. The end of a nightmare. Samuel Little passed away in 2020, but the nightmare he left behind still haunts those who were affected by his crimes. His story is a reminder of the darkness that can hide in a plain sight.